Welcome back to the Championship Crowd podcast. We'll be later joined by Watford fan Mike as we discuss towards the end of the season with Watford looking in a good position in second place. I've got a very happy man joined with Adam as usual. Norwich are going up. Adam, obviously you're very excited about that. How's your week been? Probably don't talk about that as much. We'll go on to that later on. But welcome again to the pod.
Hey, mate. Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I obviously need a haircut still, even though restrictions are back, the haircut places are back. I still haven't done that. Working hard on a dissertation this week, all sent off. Yours is about Norwich. Do you want to plug
Yeah,
that?
mine's on Norwich City and football fandom and the impact of COVID. So I'm hoping to get that published. So if anyone wants to give a read of that eventually, then it's interesting. It's interesting. I think the whole landscape of football and fandom has definitely changed. Obviously, naturally because of no fans, but for a lot of other reasons too. And I think football's going to be interesting when it returns in next season. And yeah, I don't know how it's going to go. Whether fans will have found other alternatives to attending a football game on a Saturday.
There you go. So if you fancy reading 10,000 words, then send a message to Adam. But anyways, we're going to get going with the championship. It's going getting interesting down the bottom. There's a few teams that look like they've gone away, and Derby look like they're in a worrying position now. We're going to start with Rotherham. This week, we headlined it last week as a massive week. They had three arguably massive games against Huddersfield, Coventry, and then Birmingham on the Sunday. They ended up winning the game they probably didn't need to win as much against QPR 3-1 on Tuesday. How do you think about their week, Adam?
I mean, it started quite well. I think if you'd have said to any Rotherham fan, we'll give you 4 points from the Huddersfield away game and QPR at home, I think they'd have all snapped your hand off. But obviously, most of them would have hoped then you'd back that up with at least one win, ideally two against Coventry and Birmingham. And that just hasn't been the case. I think it was probably they exerted so much energy into those first two games, which obviously paid off because they picked up points. But then probably the two games that they needed to win most, they failed to win. And it has left them in a little bit of a precarious position where if they don't now start winning sort of maybe three or four of these last games, I think that might be enough to send them down now. Obviously, Derby are really the only side, as you just said, that are now sort of in their sights. All of the rest of them have had good weeks and have pulled away. So yeah, it's not looking good for Paul Warne and Rotherham.
Yeah, so Sunday, 1-0 defeat against Birmingham. Late on, that's going to hit them hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I was looking on Twitter and most of the Rotherham fans were saying it just wasn't, they just weren't up to the standards. And I think, the togetherness of Rotherham is probably the main factor. And I don't know, I just wonder if they're now starting to think this isn't possible and starting to lose a little bit of faith and trust. And I think they had a few injuries and stuff. It's just not looking very promising. I think if they'd have obviously, as I said, picked up a few wins probably in these games that they needed to win, they would be in a much better position. I think Huddersfield away, they absolutely battered Huddersfield and they just couldn't get that goal. And a point is okay, but you needed three, and it's just they're just not getting enough wins. That's probably what I'd put it down to.
Yeah, it could also be like they've now got some pressure. They know that they could be there, they could actually survive. And now they're kind of playing with that pressure. But sometimes you see when teams, I guess, will touch on Wickham's result later on in the podcast, these teams are probably down and out now. Then they just start playing with no freedom, no restrictions in their play. They just feel, why not? Let's go and win. And they do seem to play better. So you never know, Rotherham, they might start to click in the next few games without that pressure, thinking it could be them going down. But Derby are in a damaging position. So Rotherham are 39 points, 2 games in hand on Derby, who are on 43 points. They have won only one game in 11 games, I believe, and it was a defeat against Blackburn on Friday night. How worrying is it for Rooney?
It's massively worrying. I mean, they're just not winning games. And the problem is Rotherham have those two extra games in hand, and they do play a lot of teams that have now got nothing to play for, which probably in some ways, as we saw with the QPR game, that kind of worked in Rotherham's favour. They actually managed to go out there and get that big 3-1 victory. So that will definitely be of concern to Wayne Rooney. I think he's got a lot of injuries. I remember when Norwich played them last week, they had, I think, something like 7 or 8 players out injured, and they were all sort of first team regulars. They had sort of young kids from the youth academy set up playing in different positions. And all right, it's great getting them sort of this experience this early on, but when you're fighting relegation, which Rooney's not used to as a, well, first of all, he's obviously, this is his first season in management, but secondly, his whole playing career has always been spent at the top of the Premier League as opposed to in the, the relegation battle in the Championship. So I'm not sure he's probably got in his like mindset and mentality to try and drill into these players like we're fighting for something here. I don't know if he's got that because he's always been used to the opposite, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously he came in and everyone started singing his praises. Rooney, no one, I doubted him coming in thinking, oh, this is Rooney. Is he just getting the job because he's a name? But then fair play, they beat us earlier on in the season. Surprisingly, they went on a really good run. And everyone's thinking Rooney, great manager because he was only part-time and they were like, give him the full-time job. But then he's just gone on a massive dip in form. And it is maybe that pressure of now they are in a relegation battle. And Cameron spoke about that he was thinking they were still safe even though they're having this blip. But this blip just seems like it's keep on happening. And it is a hard to get out of that mentality when you keep on losing. It will be really interesting to see, I think, the next few games, how they plan out. Derby are in a need for a win, especially because all the other teams look like they're pulled away now. So it is probably a race between Derby and Rotherham. We saw Huddersfield beating Nottingham Forest, so they're probably safe. Obviously, Birmingham, we mentioned, got that result against Rotherham. And Coventry as well. A massive win on Sunday against Barnsley. What a good win.
Yeah, that's a great win. Obviously, Barnsley are one of those sides fighting for the playoffs, and Coventry backed up a really sort of big win away at Rotherham on Thursday night with another, big win against probably one of the form sides of the Championship season, second half of the year in Barnsley. So they've not been beaten. I think other than the Sheffield Wednesday game a few weeks back at home, I don't think Barnsley have been beaten. So that's a massive win for them. That's absolutely crucial. And I think they'll be safe now, and all the Coventry fans can look forward to Championship football at the Ricoh again next season.
They probably are safe. So Coventry, 18th place, 48 points. Birmingham, 48 points. In 19th, Huddersfield, 47. Then it goes Derby, 49. Rotherham, of course, those 2 games in hand on 39. Sheffield Wednesday, it's going to be a tough ask, isn't it? 36 points. Probably very unlikely.
I think Sheffield Wednesday absolutely thumped Cardiff, didn't they? 5-0, and everyone was like, right, here we go. Sheffield Wednesday had, a little bit of a turnaround here. What's going on? And obviously, they've then gone and put 2 straight defeats on the board. Obviously, the QPR result away was so disappointing to lose in the manner they did. And obviously, Swansea, done enough to get victory at Hillsborough as well during the week. So, then they were leading Bristol City right up until, what was it, the 88th, 87th minute?
A 10-man Bristol City as well.
So I think that's probably just had it for them this season. They will be in League One. Obviously, the 6 points deduction hasn't helped them, but I would say it probably hasn't really made much of a difference in the picture. I think obviously they would be kind of now on 42 points, but I still don't think they've got the players and the mentality there to stay up. Obviously, Darren Moore is also in hospital with COVID, so he's obviously not managing them at the moment either. So it's not looking very promising if you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan.
Yeah, definite shame for Dan Moore. Wish him all the best. But going back to Barnsley, Bournemouth, we're going to come to their game against you in a second. Bournemouth look secure in that playoff, and it is probably now Barnsley and Reading. We wonder how that defeat for Barnsley will play out in terms of the next few games. Will it shape them? But they are 4 points clear of Reading, who drew 1-1 against Cardiff. Last-minute goal. Oh, there was 2 last-minute goals in that Friday night game. Barnsley probably secure out of those 2 teams.
I think Reading's form sort of ever since the pressure's sort of heated up has just not been good enough. There's now 3 draws, 1 win and 1 defeat in the last 5. 6 points from a possible 15 is not going to get you into the playoffs. So you need to be hitting sort of 10-12 points at this stage of the season to really mount the pressure onto Barnsley, and unfortunately they haven't. And what I'd say about Reading is they've also still got to play Swansea and Norwich, which that's not very favourable either, with both those sides obviously got different sort of aspirations. Obviously, Norwich might still be playing for the title by the time they play them, possibly not. But see, Swansea still looking for that automatic place as well. So it's not looking great for them, is it? I think the youth in their side will benefit from this season, but they'll be disappointed. And the problem is a lot of their better players might be poached by bigger clubs and Premier League clubs in the summer, and it could be a complete rebuild job to get ready for next season.
Yeah, that's the thing. It depends how many players they lose, but they would look at this season as they weren't expecting to get into those playoffs. So they have had a good season in terms of that. But then they might also think they were leading by quite a lot early on in the season, and the season has kind of gone slowly downhill, even though they have started picking up sometimes. They have gone on a downhill season. So going into next year might be a bit harder for them. It'd be interesting to see that. Bournemouth look secure, 3-1 win. We'll talk about the securing promotion in a second. I know you want to chat about that, but briefly, first of all, in the game, red card probably changed the game.
100%. Like, obviously, it was. I didn't really know how Norwich were going to approach this game because, obviously, as you've already just referenced, we were already promoted before this game. So I was like, are the players going to, put this on the back burner and just be like, well, let's just celebrate? But I just know Daniel Farke, he's so professional. He wanted to win in this game. And we started like a house on fire. The first 20 minutes, we had 2 or 3 really good opportunities. Obviously, Buendia, superbly worked goal. If anyone's not seen it, go and watch that. It's a great finish. And then, there was a controversial decision by the referee, sort of around about the 20th minute mark. He sent off Dimitris Giannoulis for a straight red for apparently a stamp. But if you watch it back, Pearson has slid in underneath sort of Giannoulis's foot. He's got eyes on the ball completely. So it's a little bit controversial. And I actually saw on Twitter that the referee is from Bournemouth, weirdly enough, last night. So that kind of has its, it's a few question marks in my head. But as soon as the red card happened, it was a completely different game. There was a few other controversial decisions. Bournemouth had a first goal ruled off for offside, and that was originally ruled off, and that didn't stand. And then they had another goal that was again ruled out, but then they overturned that decision and gave the goal. And then I think it was the second goal, Danjuma picked up the ball about 3 yards offside. So that should have, again, been disallowed before he played it in and, scored. So, it was a bit of a frustrating one. Obviously, because Norwich had already got promoted, I wasn't too worked up or too annoyed at the end of the day. It was just a little bit of a downer on a pretty good day.
Yeah, Bournemouth. I bet you that was just probably a Norwich fan changes Wikipedia to born in Bournemouth. Surely they can't allow him to ref a game if he's from that town and probably quite close affliction to the club. But anyways, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Adam, mate, here's your moment to shine. Norwich are promoted from the Championship yet again. What a season.
It's been, honestly, obviously when you've been sort of having to watch from home, you kind of hope your team will have a good season just so you've got something to look forward to on a Saturday where you can't go to the football and, be there to witness it live. And the only thing is I would have quite liked to have been there this season because it's been just such a good season from start to finish. We've always just seemed like we've gone into every game expecting to win. And even the games we've lost have only ever really been by like a 1-goal margin, 6 defeats all season. And it's just been Emi Buendia is basically a Premier League player playing in the Championship. Pukki has, again, just proved why he is such a good player at this level. Todd Cantwell, again, just, he wants to get back to the Premier League. And I've got no complaints over anything. It's just a case of building now. We need to build a squad that's capable to stay up and actually give it a go this time. I think the thing is, last time we just weren't prepared for promotion. We didn't expect to get promoted. This time, the whole season, I think Farke said last night, Norwich, the whole season have expected they'll get promoted, which that's quite, a bold statement and a bold mentality to be, but that's
easy to say that when you have just been promoted, though, isn't it?
That is true, but I think the fact they managed to keep hold of so many of their key players from last season. The only ones they sold were Godfrey and Jamal Lewis, but they managed to replace them so well. And it was just yesterday was such a good day. Obviously, didn't expect. As I think you knew, I was out with a few friends yesterday, and we all kind of were waiting for the 8 p.m. game, which we'll have a few beers, and by the time we reached the second pub, Norwich were already promoted because Swansea and Brentford had slipped up. So we'll move onto these other results now. Let's start with Swansea, Chris, because you obviously had an interest in this game. They're playing bottom of the league, Wycombe Wanderers. Okay, they've got a slim chance of survival, but realistically, I think it was going to be a bit far-fetched. And you find yourself 2-0 down. What went wrong?
Yeah, nightmare. I was coming back from a brief holiday, so I was in the car listening to the radio, and it's interesting listening to the radio compared to watching it, because I tend to watch all the games this season. And yeah, it sounded like we started off all right. Looking at the highlights, we did a few chances in the first half. Massive shame early on to have Andre Ayew go off injured, which could prove pivotal going in towards the end of the season. But he did walk off, as in, like, yeah, I don't know. Cooper says it's very unlikely that he'll be playing on Tuesday, but like, it's not like he's been stretched off. So I have some optimism, maybe going into maybe the Watford game, that he could be back for that. But that's going to be massive. Early goal to the second half was damaging for us. Then they went 2-0 up. We got a penalty. Everyone's like, oh, Swansea got another penalty. But no, we've hardly got any penalties this season. The media just love picking up on it. It was a penalty. 2-2. Liam Cullen back from injury. What a boy. What a legend. And then last minute of the game, Routledge jumps up to head it. Oh, no, not Routledge. Someone jumped up to head it. Manning jumped up to head it, sorry. Got pushed. Not a penalty. Could have been a last minute penalty. But yeah, it's a shame. It's a massive shame. There's two ways to look at it. Great to come back 2-2. But at the end of the day, we've dropped 2 points against a team that's League One standard, let's be fair. Wickham, they've done a great job this season to get as many points as they actually have with the infrastructure in their team, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, Swansea, what are we doing? These are the games we always mess up, and it's just one of those things. As a Swansea fan, I probably knew going into the game that out of all the games coming up, this is the game that we're going to drop points, just because that's how we roll, and it's going to be damaging going into the last few games. But I'm still looking at it with optimism as usual, because I always look at the positives, even though probably the majority of Swansea fans are saying there's no chance. Oh, you never know. You never know. Brentford, though, not a good result for them. So 1 win in 5 for them. A draw, 0-0 against Millwall. What did you think of that?
Obviously, Millwall have been on a very good run until they played you last week, and I expected they would get a reaction in this game, but I thought Brentford, they know they have this game in hand on Watford, and they knew that Watford's running is tough. It is really tough, and I thought they would probably go out there and get the 3 points. Obviously, Tony and Force up front. I think they had 2 strikers, so they were probably going for this game effectively, and they've effectively shot another blank. They've really been struggling the last 3, 4, 5 games. I think they've now had a couple of games of 0-0s. They drew 0-0 with Birmingham, didn't they, a few weeks back as well? So they just don't quite look like the attacking side. Right, they destroyed Preston last time out, but before that, again, they just haven't really been that free-flowing side. And I don't know, I just think Brentford, they just seem to have a habit, don't they? At the end of the season, when the pressure gets onto them, they just can't quite cope with it. And I don't know why that is, because Thomas Frank, I believe, has got quite a good sort of background in psychology and stuff. So you would think he would be good at drilling his players, but seemingly not. And I think what would be more disappointing for them is the fact that they obviously, in the end, found out that Watford had lost as well. So they had another big opportunity and they've missed it.
Yeah, Thomas Frank did a degree in psychology. Obviously worked last season with the second semi-final playoff with all the referee and stuff like that. But it's interesting that his team seems to bottle it, even though he's meant to be good at that. That's his actual degree. But anyways, you mentioned it, Watford. We're now going to be joined by Mike, a Watford fan. And let's hear why he supports Watford. We're now joined by Mike Duffy from @Voices of the Vic podcast. Have a listen to that if you haven't listened to that yet, guys. But let's speak to you, Mike. So you're a Watford fan. How can we support Watford?
Well, originally from Birmingham, but my dad was born at Watford General Hospital, which is the hospital right next door to the ground. So I sort of followed his footsteps. So being a roller coaster driver, 20 odd years supporting them, and do you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world, mate. So
best moments then. You wouldn't change it for the world. There must be a few good moments in there.
Yeah, you got the obvious ones to outside of Watford fans that would point to the Troy Deeney last-minute goal. It was great being there. Getting to the FA Cup final, the circumstances being 2-0 down to Wolves and bringing that back in the semi. Promotion to the Premier League, having 5 years in the Premier League. A lot of people, every season we were in the Prem, we were tipped to go down, and it took 5 years for that to finally happen. So, yeah, every season in the Prem we've beaten one of the so-called top 6 as well. So a lot of good memories.
Yeah, it is good staying in the Premier League. Adam probably doesn't know that as a Norwich fan. Did you leave that semi-final early? You talked about it. 2-0 down, stayed. Because I remember me and Adam go to university near Wembley. We remember looking at quite a lot of Watford fans leaving early. But the final wasn't as good, was it?
No, the final, to be honest, I knew that we weren't going to turn up and beat City. It takes something phenomenal to do so. But yeah, the semi-final, we still had a good day. We were at the Green Man. That's always a pub we want to get when we're at Wembley. And we were there for the semi, we were there for the final. So yeah, not a great final, but the first one since 1984 and the first one in my lifetime. So yeah, I'll cherish it, even though we got absolutely hammered.
Yes, if you're in Wembley, definitely recommend the Green Man. That is a good pub. Anyways, Mike, we're going to throw you straight into the deep zone when we're talking about the Championship. We play a little game on this podcast. It's called Case for Promotion. You're Watford fans, so you're in a good position to get those top 2. So you would think it's going to be fairly easy, but we're going to make it a bit more challenging. You can't say Isco Muniz, Sarr, or Watford in these 30 seconds. Your time is going to start in a second. I'm going to get the timer up. Are you ready to do this for Watford?
Yeah, cheers for throwing me under the bus so early, guys. But yeah, no, let's give it a crack, man.
We thought we're going to have to put him under pressure. I'm a Swansea fan, so I wanted you to mess up. So get in doing it early doors. Mike, 30 seconds to start now.
I think we will get promoted because of the togetherness in the squad. You look at other teams around, no offence to you, Chris, or any Brentford fans listening, but it just seems that certain teams are reliant on certain players, whereas we've got goal scorers throughout the squad. I think off the top of my head, there's maybe 15 different goal scorers this season. I might be way off there, but there is quite a few goal scorers in the team. So that team togetherness is what's going to get us over the line.
Team togetherness, 30 seconds, perfect stuff. I think that's a good argument. We saw Ayew go off injured on the weekend. Haven't heard yet, depending on the injury. So that could be very damaging going in to the rest of the season. I'll hand you over to Adam.
Yes, obviously you've got 4 big games coming up towards the end of the season, obviously starting on Tuesday night. But obviously you had the disappointing result of the weekend. Sort of how did you analyse that one as you sort of move forwards?
Yeah, it was really disappointing, to be honest. We turned up. It's a derby game. Everyone knows the importance of a derby game. It's the first time we played at Kenilworth Road in 14, 15 years. So, we wanted to win, not just because we're up there in seconds, but because the significance of a derby game. And from the referee's whistle, we just did not look on it. Luton looked so organised. They looked more hungry for it, and we just couldn't get anything going whatsoever. No momentum, and it was just a poor performance from start to finish.
There's a few fans alluding to some sort of controversial decisions. Did you deem any of them controversial?
No, I mean the penalty was a penalty. We were really unlucky. We had our second choice left back, who's not long joined the club. He had to come in like right before the kick-off because our usual left back Adam Messina was ill. So Ashraf Lazar, who we brought in, he's not the best. I think he's probably the best to say. And he's absolutely done Bachmann no favours whatsoever with his pass back to Bachmann. Bachmann had no choice but to come out and try and win the ball. And Adebayo, I think he's the lad up top for Luton. He's got there before Bachmann, and Bachmann's just took him out completely. So as annoying as it is, I've got no arguments for their penalty. And then the other decision I assume you're alluding to is the Andre Jermaine Gray last-minute goal. I mean, I won't watch that game back. I usually do, but I won't be watching it back. But our commentators, when I was watching the game, said that they've analysed it and Gray was just offside. But I think the argument from the players was that it hit a Luton player on the way in. So without watching it, yes, it was gutting because I was going absolutely ballistic when it went in. But yeah, it just we didn't deserve anything from that game. I mean, it would have been brilliant to come away with something, having not deserved it. But I can't argue with the officials. It was we were the architects of our own downfall yesterday, big time.
And also, you got a massive game now coming up on Tuesday against my team, Norwich. Obviously, you got quite a good record against us. I think you've beaten us 4 of the last 5 times, but I think it's your away record this season's been a little bit sort of up and down. So how do you sort of view that coming to Carrow Road? Obviously, Norwich already promoted, can get the title against you. How do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, I would have preferred the title to have been wrapped up by now, obviously. And it doesn't help that you're coming in off the back of a 3-1 defeat against Bournemouth, which your players and your management won't be very, very happy with. So you'll want to come back sort of fighting. You've got a chance to wrap up the title, as you say. I'm expecting a tough game. You know, even the reverse fixture at Vicarage Road, you know, that was closely contested. And I think we were lucky to maybe hang on to that 1-0. But on my podcast today, we talked about it. I've actually gone for a 2-2 draw. I think, you know, if you look at, that was our second defeat in 15 games yesterday. And if you look at the first game, the other game that we lost was against Bournemouth, who was another sort of rivalry for us. And it all kicked off at the ends and it was like a really scrappy game. But that kicking off at the end actually brought the togetherness of the team. So I'm hoping that it has a similar effect. Yesterday's disappointing performance sort of gives them a rocket. And then obviously if we can get something at Carrow Road, the lads will be buzzing and we can take that into the last 3 games. Well, 3-4 games.
So then the next one after that is a massive game against Millwall, who have been sort of on a bit of an upturn of form. I think other than that Swansea result last week, they've been on quite a good run. So how do you see that one? Is that quite a pivotal game before those last 2 against sort of third and fourth?
Massively. I mean, I was trying to work it out on my podcast this morning, but I don't know if we can actually go up on that Millwall game if other results go our way. So that is a massive game. Home form has been absolutely, you know, instrumental for us. We've picked up 53 points at the Vic this season. I think somebody put a tweet out the other day saying that's the most since Newcastle when they went up in 2017 or whenever it was. So, you know, that is, or it might have been Wolves actually, sorry, from quite a few years back. So to pick up 53 points at home, automatically when we've been at home this season, we just feel so much more confident. And, you know, we've got Chrissy's boys to play at home as well. And that's going to be a tough game. And I'm hoping it's all wrapped up by then because I do not want to, I'm sure Chris and his lot are probably thinking the opposite, but I don't want to be going into that game with you know, having to beat Swansea to go up.
Yeah, I think you won't. I think you won't be able to wrap it up because Brentford's game in hand, which means
of course, yes.
they'll just be able to play it. But you could then wrap it up in the Brentford game. That would be good away from home.
Yeah, and then obviously, yeah, that last game against Swansea. Obviously, you don't want to be going into that one. But if you do obviously get promoted this season, how do you sort of think your chances of survival next season in the Premier League?
To be honest, mate, I've not really thought about it that much, as crazy as that might sound. I think the whole of the Watford fan base at the moment is sort of worrying if we're going to get over that line, especially after yesterday. So it's sort of, I know it's cliche to say, but it is literally taking it one game at a time. You know, there's certain complications around, will the manager still be there next season? Because at the moment, he's doing his coaching badges to enable him to manage in the Premier League because he doesn't have the correct coaching badges at the moment to manage in the Prem. And then, you know, there's certain players that, yes, they've been good in the Championship. Would they then acclimatise to playing in the Premier League? There's loads of different factors. I'd like to think that the Pozzos, our owners, have learned from that last season and certainly know what to do this time round. And I'm sure it's similar with you guys, really. You know, I think towards the end of the season, last season, I think your owner sort of said, look, we know we're going down, so we've started preparing early for the Championship, and it's paid dividends for you boys big time.
So that's quite interesting. I didn't realise that. So what coaching badges does he still need to do?
He doesn't have a pro license, as far as I'm aware. So we nabbed him from the Georgian league. So me and you could probably manage in that league, to be honest, mate. So he's the Pozzos have got this crazy knack of finding these coaches that are like that young coaches that are like really well thought of. And I vaguely remember Cisco as a player at Valencia. I think he won the Europa League with them, but yeah, he doesn't have the qualifications. You're all right to managing the champ with it. It's just at the Premier League you can't. But I think they're doing something to extend it, or he's working on them at the moment, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not going to be like, Watford are promoted, we have to now sack your manager.
It wouldn't be the first time, mate. It would not be the first time that we've done that. So
yeah, true. Yeah, Watford are used to sacking managers, aren't you? But yeah, you do pick up all these good managers, but then it seems like they don't stay for long. Is there a reason behind that?
yeah, I think the general consensus, as you just said, Watford sack a lot of managers. If you actually look back on the managers that we've had since the Pozzos have come in, I think a lot of non-Watford fans would actually be surprised at how many haven't actually been sacked, and it's come to the end of their clause in a contract, or a clause has been triggered. Like Quique Sanchez Flores, the first time he was round, he kept us up. At one stage we were looking like we were going to finish in the top half. We comfortably stayed up that first season in 15-16, and he left at the end of the season. Now that's because there was a clause triggered in his contract, so technically he wasn't sacked. I'm trying to think of others. The Walter Mazzari, he was. I think he was given a contract which the contract ran out. So there's a lot of managers that we've had that haven't technically been sacked. I mean, Jukanovic took us up, and then obviously from the outside football world, they'd be thinking he's just gotten promoted and they've sacked him, but he wanted more money. There was more complications. So again, they triggered a clause in his contract. I think the Pozzos are very, very business smart when it comes to appointing managers like that. They can add in clauses, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we're sacking all these managers. But up until, I would say, last season, I think that approach of hiring and firing, if you like, if you want to call it that, I think that worked. And then we made the wrong decision. We bring in Sanchez Flores back last season. Nigel Pearson then getting sacked, another decision which I think cost us in the end. And yeah, but up until last season, I was, it worked for us. So.
And yeah, and then touching on that Nigel Pearson, because you weren't in the relegation zone, were you? I think you were a few points safe going into the last 3 games.
We should not have even been in with a chance of surviving. We were rock bottom, and I'm sure Adam remembers our first win was at Carrow Road. So
yeah, that was probably the lowest point I'd felt all last season. I remember going into the pub after the game, and it was one of my mates' birthdays, and I was just not in the mood. I want to go home.
Yeah, I mean, if Andre Gray scores against you, you're in trouble, mate. But no, he did brilliant. Pearson come in. He just brought things back to basics. There's rumours that one of the first things he did, he held a big team meeting and included every single member of staff within the club, not just coaches, like officials that work there, hospitality staff, everything. So he wanted to sort of get that togetherness within the squad, and it worked. I think we beat Man United at home. We beat Liverpool, obviously that famous victory. But I think the game that did it for us was losing away to Aston Villa, which was a bitter pill to swallow for me personally, because obviously being from Birmingham and having loads of friends that are Aston Villa fans, and I was at the game in the away ends, and that was the one for me that was sort of did it for our chances of staying up. But yeah, he did superbly to give us a chance of staying up, as you say, Chris. We were long gone as far as we were aware.
Yeah, because his last 2 games, and he just decided to sack him. There must have probably been something behind the scenes, you would guess. But I guess going back to this season, Xisco Muniz, I remember Swansea played Watford around December time, and I wasn't wowed by you. I think you got an early goal in that game, and I think first few months it wasn't like he was meant to come in as a more attacking manager, and it didn't really see that. But then it's just started to click, and you guys have gone on this massive winning run. How do you see it from a Watford perspective?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I remember that game. I think Cleverley scored early on, and then obviously Jamal Lowe got the 2 for you. But um, there was a point where Cisco was even looking like he might get the sack at one stage. He was very reluctant to change the tactics. We were going with a 4-4-2. It just wasn't working. There was a game where we played Coventry away at St Andrews when we drew 0-0, and it was on Sky. And I love football. I've like I said, I've been through loads with Watford, club almost going bust to then 5 years in the Premier League. So I've never once said I don't like football anymore, or I can't do this anymore. After that Coventry game, I genuinely switched off the TV and I thought, no, I cannot watch anymore. Like it was one of the worst games of football I've ever seen. We drew 0-0, just derelict of any chances. The players were kicking off with each other. We then found out after the game that we were working on a new tactic up until the Thursday, and then on the match day he changed. He kept the 4-4-2. And then we've since found out through an interview with Tom Cleverley, who he did with a Watford fan channel, that Trooster Kong, our centre-back, called a team meeting. They all chatted amongst themselves, sort of aired any problems they had. Cisco then changed to a 4-3-3. First, and it was against Bristol City, and people were saying that stupid fans were saying, "Oh, you know what? I'll take a defeat here because it means it'll go." And I'm thinking, nah, come on, you can't be saying that. And then we've obviously changed the formation to 4-3-3, won 6-0. We was like, oh my God, this is what we've been wanting all season. And then, yeah, we went on that crazy run. And I think obviously winning 6-0 played a big part in it, but it was how we bounced back. I think the next game was possibly I think it was the 3-2 win at Blackburn, I think. But from then on, it just looked like that 4-3-3 is what we were screaming out for the whole season. Ivic never really had a fully fit side to use that because he was known for playing a 4-3-3. Wasn't able to do it at Watford, unfortunately. But it's just like a bit frustrating as well because you're thinking, well, if we'd have had that full fit side and we'd played 4-3-3 earlier, could we have been in Norwich's position? Could we have had something wrapped up by now? So, but yeah, that 4-3-3 change was instrumental, and that was the clicking point of our season.
Yeah, 100%. Because since then you have been firing. You've gone on that massive winning run. You took that blip recently, but it is going to be an exciting last few games with Norwich, Millwall, Brentford, and Swansea. You never know. It is the Championship. I'm thinking it is the Championship. You don't want to be in that pole position because there's going to be a twist. How are you seeing those last few games? Wrap it up in 20 seconds.
I was very, very nervous after the game. I sent various messages saying, that's it, we bottled it now, we ain't going to go up. But in hindsight, it's still in our hands. I like to think that the lads know what's expected of them, and we can just creep over the line. Just
creep over the line. I'm hoping otherwise. If you want to hear more from Mike, head over to his channel. Do you want to talk us through your channel quickly, your podcast?
Yeah. So myself and my co-host Ben Ayton do a Watford podcast called Voices of the Vic. We've been going for a year in June, and we just generally, after games, will speak about the games, look ahead to the next games, and then we tend to have other podcasts on from other teams to talk about the next game. So yeah, check it out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
There you go, guys. Watford fans, head over to that. Anyways, thank you very much for coming on, Mike.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me, gents.
Brilliant. It was good having Mike on there. He did discuss briefly that game coming up for yourself, Adam. You could be crowned champions on Tuesday. What's your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it's another huge game for Norwich. So we've had a difficult end to the season. We have got a difficult end to the season now coming. What I'd say is Norwich are at home, and we have been typically very good at home this season. That Bournemouth game was our second home defeat all season, and the other one came back in September against Derby. So it's been a while since we've been defeated. It'll be interesting to see how we react. Typically, we are very good at reacting after a defeat this season. I remember when we lost to Swansea, we then went on a 13-match unbeaten run. So obviously we can't do that because the season doesn't extend past another 3 or 4 games. But in 2021, Norwich have conceded more goals with 10 men on the pitch than they have with 11. So basically, with 11 men on the pitch in 2021, we've conceded 2 goals in 810 minutes of football. And in the other, like basically with the Giannoulis red card on Saturday, we conceded 3 in 73 minutes. So it's been, as long as we don't get a red card, I think we'll be all right. That's what I'd say. But it's going to be a difficult one. Obviously, Watford they probably want this game more than us to an extent. Obviously, we can win the title, but we're up. At the end of the day, promotion is all we really wanted at the start of the season. So the main objective is already been hit. So Watford know they need this to keep Swansea and Brentford at bay.
Yeah, and you usually see those top teams when they've got that promotion, then they do take that drop in form. If I just think back to the previous few seasons, those teams that have got promoted, then often lose those next few games, and then their titles in the balance. Do you think Norwich players, would they have been partying Friday, or maybe even partying during the day, hence losing to Bournemouth?
I mean, there was a massive party last night. There was scenes on the pitch of players drinking before and after the game. Well, not before the game, but after the game.
Lucozade or more than Lucozade?
No, there was a lot of beverages being consumed. Kenny McLean was dancing around the dressing room in his pants, and he was looking fairly tipsy for a professional footballer. But what I'd say is Daniel Farke's mentality is we want to try and get 100 points. He's very much I think Norwich can get a club record points total in the Championship as well. I think our last one was 94 in 2018-19. And obviously Daniel Farke wants to get back-to-back Championship, trophies in the 2 seasons he's been in it. The last 2, he wants 2 Championship titles to his name. So he's not going to let the mentality slip. None of the players are going to let the mentality slip. They all want to see the job over the line. But it's going to be a tough one. I would probably take a draw because I think that would be enough to, even though it wouldn't seal the title as such, I think that would seal it because Watford would still be 8 points behind then with 3 games to go. And, I can't see Norwich not picking up at least 1 to 2 points. So I would probably say as long as we don't lose on Tuesday night, I think we can probably whack the champagne open and say we've clinched the title.
Yeah, the title, it's without any doubt you're going to win the title. It's just when it would be nice to do it on Tuesday, but I guess you might like a draw. I'm looking at that game thinking, Adam, come on, pull out a 5-0 victory because the goal difference is not looking in our favour in terms of that. But Watford, I do think they could slip up some other games. I look at Millwall and we're thinking, Millwall, they're not playing for much, but draw against Brentford, they obviously lost to us recently. Previously, they had been on a really good run. And I think they could pull off another maybe draw or defeat against Watford. What's your thoughts on that?
The only thing I'd say is that Watford are at home. Their home form, as Mike alluded to, is the best in the league by quite a far stretch. I think they're about 8 or 9 points clear of Norwich in terms of home form. So Millwall going there, that's not going to be easy. Although, Watford have been beaten at home this season by a London rival in QPR. So maybe Millwall will look at that and think, let's add another sort of London scalp to our name because they've not really got anything else to play for now this season. But they have had a very good sort of last 7, 8, 9 games of the season so far. So they're going to want to try and finish strongly, and Gary Rowett will be hoping for a much better season next season with Millwall because they've got sort of a good core of players there, and they are definitely building something at Millwall.
Yeah, they'll be looking at it. They could possibly finish in 8th position, which will be a very good season for themselves. So you never know. I'm thinking hopefully they can pull out of the bag. But as we saw on Saturday, even if Watford lose, we need to do our job. 2 important games. I guess QPR, we look at that. We've got to win that. We should win that. The harder game, I'm looking Sunday, 12 o'clock, away to Reading. Can we get a result there? Reading probably still playing for the playoffs, but they're not looking great, are they?
No, obviously, Reading, I think this game is hinged actually on what Barnsley do during the week to an extent, because I think Barnsley play before Reading do. I think Barnsley played a Saturday against Rotherham. So if Barnsley have come into this with defeat, it's almost extra momentum and motivation, I suppose you'd say, for Reading to try and close that gap to Barnsley. Obviously for Swansea, if Watford have been defeated by Norwich and then maybe have suffered a draw or a defeat to Millwall, again, it's motivation for them. I think at this time of the season, a lot hinges on other results more than your own results to an extent, because you're chasing teams, you need other teams to slip up. If not, ultimately, your goal of Swansea can't get into the automatics if Watford don't slip up. So I think it's going to be interesting, the fact that game's on the Sunday. I think that's what makes that almost more of an interesting game. And I think both sides will, be looking at that as if we need to win this game, because neither can really. A draw doesn't help either.
In my head, I look at it thinking we could be level with Watford with a win next Sunday. It would be interesting. Barnsley, you mentioned, it depends on their situation, but they're playing two teams. You think, come on, you've got to win those games. Huddersfield, I believe, in midweek before playing Rotherham. Rotherham obviously going to be fighting for something. Huddersfield probably safe now. So you would think that Barnsley probably have a massive gap on Reading anyways. That Reading might just give up and give us the win, but we shall see. Brentford, though, interesting 2 games for them. Cardiff at home and then away to Bournemouth. Cardiff obviously not in great form, but Bournemouth, I look at that, they're going to struggle there, aren't they?
That's 2 quite tricky games. Obviously, Cardiff, even though, as you sort of just said, they have had a bit of a dip in form over the last few weeks, and it feels like the Mick McCarthy sort of bounce, it hit straight away, and everyone's like, oh, Cardiff are going to get the playoffs, and it's just fallen off. But one thing I'd probably say is, he wants to probably get these players prepared for next season to have a proper go, because Cardiff are one of these sides that are still getting parachute money. They only dropped out of the Prem a couple of years back, so they've still, got to be looking for next season to build. And I think he'll be wanting to get some good results. So Brentford are going to have a tricky game there. But as you just said, that game at the weekend is huge. Bournemouth, 6 straight wins and in the league, and they're flying. Danjuma was outstanding against Norwich last night, but honestly, one of the best individual player performances I've seen all season. And they just look like a very well-drilled and sort of a side that is wanting to keep this momentum ticking into the playoffs, because obviously I would say their playoff place is now secure. So they're going to hope that they can maybe make it, the 3 relegated sides could all potentially all get back promoted straight away. So they're going to hope for that. So it's a massive game for both. I think Brentford know that if they win during the week, the pressure is probably slightly more off them going into that Bournemouth game, in the sense that obviously they'll also know that, that Watford are, depending on what Watford do as well against Norwich, I think that's obviously going to give them extra or less motivation.
But you say the pressure's off them. It could be more like the other way around, that they're actually thinking, oh, if Watford lose, they're getting closer to it. So it could be going back to last season when they lost against Barnsley in the last game of the season. Sorry to mention that, Brentford fans. But that game on Saturday is probably a good game to weigh up the playoffs, because both those teams are probably going to be in the playoffs and potentially playing each other in that semi-final. So it'll be very interesting to see how managers prepare for that. Maybe you don't want to give your true tactics away before the playoffs, but then obviously you're going to want to win. So that's going to be a very big game on Saturday. Going back down to Derby and Rotherham. Derby away to Preston on Tuesday, and then at home against Birmingham. 2 games you would think they should probably be winning.
Yeah, these are massive, because obviously they have got Swansea after that, and depending on how things are, Swansea might be needing to win that to still sort of keep their top 2 hopes alive. So that's going to be probably a game you could potentially say they're not going to get anything from. So I think they've got 3 massive games. The 2 coming this week are huge, because Rotherham have also got some games where they'll be looking to try and pick up some points. And I think Derby know they probably still need 2 more wins to really secure safety. And if they could do that this week, then obviously then they can relax and start a rebuilding job ready for next season. But Derby just needs such a lot of kind of work done there. I think Rooney's sort of inherited a squad that obviously isn't his, but they've got a lot of young prospects, but they've got a lot of deadwood in certain places, in my opinion. And it's going to be interesting.
It's more of an ownership, though, isn't it? They're meant to sell their club, months ago, and they still haven't sold. I don't know what's happening there. Hopefully, maybe this summer, for Rooney's sake, that they will sell. But you're thinking, maybe owners are thinking, we need to wait off until the end of the season, just in case they go to League One. I doubt that will be the case. I think this week will be pivotal for Derby. Probably get a draw against Preston, and then come on, they're going to win against Birmingham. Birmingham are now thinking we're safe. That's all a jolly. They're going to win there. So Rotherham, they need to win both of their games in my eyes. It's going to be a hard one against Middlesbrough, and then they've got Barnsley, I believe, as well. Can they get any results there?
It's weird because obviously Rotherham haven't really picked up the results they wanted in the last couple of games. Although what you'd say is they went and got that result against QPR. I mean, Middlesbrough have now got nothing to play for this season. Barnsley, okay, they're fighting for the playoffs, but that is a safe Yorkshire derby. And as Sheffield Wednesday proved a few weeks back, anyone can beat anyone in this division. So they're going to go there knowing that they can obviously damage Barnsley's, potentially their playoff push if Reading obviously can back up some wins as well this week. So there's extra motivation in there more than just themselves, if you know what I mean. So I would go as far to say that this is the defining week for both these two sides. I think whichever side picks up the more points this week, that will probably be the deciding factor. I think if Derby pick up at least one win and Rotherham don't win, then that's probably game over, or vice versa. I think if Rotherham do manage to get, say, 4 points from this week, I would say with the extra games in hand they have, Derby are then probably the favourites to go down.
And Barnsley did slip up against Sheffield Wednesday, another Yorkshire side recently. So it could be the same thing in terms of Rotherham's fairly close as well. So it is going to be a very exciting week, as usual in the Championship. You've got the midweek games. For us, we're keeping an eye on the Tuesday games, but obviously you've got Rotherham and quite a lot of other teams playing on the Wednesday. We'll be back again at the usual time of 11 a.m. on a Tuesday from now on until the end of the season. Hope you're all well, guys. Adam, any last messages?
Yes, obviously follow us on all the usual platforms. We are so close to 200 followers on Twitter. I beg, please, someone just follow us. Like, we're so close. So that's at ChampCrowdPod. And then obviously we're on all the usual platforms you can actually get our podcast on. So that's Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and we're obviously on the WD Sports YouTube channel. The engagement over the last few weeks has been really, really good. So we're very thankful for that. Keep it up, keep the support, and we're trying to get you on some good guests for the next coming weeks. So we're working behind the scenes on that.
Yes, very thank you to Mike for coming on. Definitely check out his podcast as well. If you do listen to Apple Podcasts, I believe you can give us a rating. If you like it, then give us a rating. If you don't like the podcast, then maybe pretend I didn't mention it and don't give us a rating. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Have a good week. See you next week.